So it all began in September of 2016 to bring the Union Pacific steam locomotive, the 844, to Boise for the Boise Train Depot's 92nd anniversary. The idea was put into my head by a good friend of mine who said if anyone could bring the 844 to Idaho, it would be you. Eventually that idea brewed long enough to ask that question to Travis Campbell, the state coordinator for Operation Lifesaver. So on Saturday, April 22nd, was a big day. The 844 had been turned about 30 miles outside of Nampa, so it backed into town. It was well received by hundreds of people on both sides of the tracks. Everyone from little kids to older adults were all there with their cameras taking pictures. Travis called me over to the 844 and let me climb up into the cab, and the engineer was Ed Dickens, the senior manager of the Heritage Fleet for Union Pacific. So when we left Nampa, I was able to get video footage from the cab, and as we progressed, every railroad crossing from Nampa to Boise through Meridian was lined with people. As we rounded the curve, and the engineer was Ed Dickens, he later quoted in an article for Union Pacific that was like pulling into a rock concert. We had over 2,000 people. I looked out from the cab, and up and down the platform, all I could see was people. I couldn't even see the platform anymore. And they all came up to me, wanting to take pictures with me, wanting to know about the engine, wanting to know if I was with the steam crew. It was an overwhelming experience. I got down to their level for most of them, handed my conductor's cap off to them, and it really put a smile on their faces. The whole experience of the 844 arriving into Boise and being able to ride in on the engine, and that I was able to share the engine and the history of the Union Pacific. Not only for the young kids who had never seen it, to see their eyes light up and their smiles with me, the conductor in front of the steam locomotive, but also the older generation. The 844's history dates back to 1944. So that history of the West is now being preserved through the Union Pacific steam operations. Instead of reading it in a textbook, you can now see and touch and hear the real deal. Union Pacific continuously trying to keep their history alive through this program, which is great. So Sunday morning started off bright and sunny. As the day went on, more and more people started arriving. I was quite busy with photographs and talk about the engine, its history. Okay. I was able to get the engine to blow its whistle at the stroke of noon. To announce the event was officially open. By that time, hundreds of people were swarming the platform to look inside the cab. Overall, the event was a great success. It surpassed all other open houses that we had in the past. This showed not only the Parks and Rec, but Union Pacific, that there's still a need and a call, and people still want to see the steam engines. Ed and the whole crew down in Cheyenne not only has to maintain these engines, but take time out of their lives to run the engines, bring them throughout the United States for people to see. So during the open house, I led 2 historic tours of the depot, and this time the tour encompassed the history of the 844 and all the passenger cars it was pulling behind it. Everyone wanted to know all about the steam locomotive, how big it was, how long it was, how heavy it was, how far it can go before refueling. So in total, at the end of Sunday's event, we had over 6,900 people show up to the open house. This topped all open houses previously in the past 2 years. And I talked to many people now, almost a year later, and they still thank me that I brought the engine out there. Even though I was only the one who pushed the domino, you could say, asked that question and who to contact. If we lost the Union Pacific steam operations from the United States, not only would Union Pacific lose part of its history, the United States, the small towns, would miss out on a piece of American history that's no longer around. The thrill and the chills you get when the steam engine passes by, pulling armored yellow passenger cars from the 1930s and 40s, and brings back a time that we all feel like we did live back then. You'll never get that at a static display, at a museum. It doesn't breathe, you don't feel it, you don't hear it, and you don't get that same appreciation. I would like to give a big thank you to Ed Dickens, the senior manager of the Heritage Fleet, and his crew for accepting the application, wanting to bring the 844 to Boise for the 92nd anniversary open house. It was a weekend that I'll never forget. And until next time, the memory of this past weekend will live on forever in our hearts.